You're 17 years old, and you are the best extemporaneous and impromptu speaker in the state of Michigan. The couple hundred people in your high school class don't take you all that seriously right now, but they'll take you seriously once they see how you can speak about politics with authority. You are going to earn their respect. It's a Saturday morning and you've been up since 6 a.m. Right now, you're standing in front of a blackboard in a Kalamazoo high school classroom, looking at a room of mostly empty desks. Two of your competitors have already delivered their speeches. Every school day of every week, you've been working with coaches to practice speaking impromptu for hours. Every Friday before weekly chapel, you've been going to the library and printing out a stack of the most recent news from the New York Times and Washington Post. People you've never met are posting on LiveJournal that they think you're going to win the state championship. Last tournament, you had a complete stranger come up to you and say, "Hey, good luck in finals." You're pretty sure you're gonna win. And if you don't, you're gonna win. There's 6 total people in this classroom, including you and your competitors. One older man, he looks just like the kid in the blue tie, so you're assuming that's his dad. And then there's the judge and the guy with the timer. Gotta remember to make eye contact with the judge this time. The timer will put up note cards letting you know how many minutes you have left in your speech, which is good because just like every other speaker in this competition, you're making this whole thing up off the top of your head. You smile at the judge, or attempt something approaching a smile. You've got this, just like the dozens of rounds before. Judge ready? Timer ready? This is a video about TikTok.
Is it too late now to play sorry?
Now, I'm going to put my cards on the table very early on here and say that most of the content that enjoys immense popularity on TikTok doesn't really resonate with me. And so I'll give some recommendations for good creators at the end of this video. Like any large platform, TikTok has lots of sub-communities that deserve exposure and attention. But for today, we're going to be focusing on how the platform has achieved the kind of blockbuster success that social media hasn't seen since the rise of Facebook. Now, having myself been around for that shift, which precipitated the fall of LiveJournal, MySpace, and Web 1.0 in general, I do see some parallels between what teenagers are doing with TikTok now and what I saw online during my own adolescence. We'll get to that later, though. For now, let's start where everyone starts on opening TikTok for the very first time. The For You page, TikTok's algorithmically curated IV drip of good content. It tailors itself over time based on what you tend to enjoy as expressed through rewatches and likes, but right out of the gate, you're going to get fed the stuff that tends to enjoy the broadest possible appeal. So what does broad appeal look like?
Hello everyone, today I am making a little summertime burger using the Even Better burger.
TikTok loves beautiful people. By that, I mean people who fit the white, Western, particularly American, conception of beauty, at least if you're using the app over here. Strong angular features, straight hair, physically fit build, and so forth. This isn't too much of a surprise. People like to look at beautiful things, and especially at beautiful people. Predicting attractiveness based on past performance is nothing new in the world of apps either. Tinder, OkCupid, and other dating apps use a selective curation process that defines users by relative desirability, based on the percentage of time that someone swipes right on their profiles, and pairs new matches accordingly. Now, with TikTok, it's a bit different. The For You page optimizes on a one-to-many basis rather than a one-to-one basis, and this, of course, means that beautiful people are served to a broad swath of the user base and get a lot of likes, even if they're being complete assholes, which they frequently are. A lot of this can be automated through algorithms, and TikTok likely uses something similar to a model dataset called SCUT FBP 5500, which was developed at South China University of Technology in Guangzhou. If you're interested in learning more or playing with it for yourself, I'll link the summary and GitHub in the description, but it basically uses a neural network to compare inputs fed into it, photos of people that is, with a preset database of 5,500 faces, rated hot or not style from 1 to 5. Now, because of the nature of machine learning, the algorithm grows more powerful and more predictive as the dataset grows larger. So if a new photo shares similar geometry and other characteristics to an existing photo of a 5, the person depicted in the new photo is probably also a 5 and will be marked as such. Now, if the algorithm needs to check in on the accuracy of its model, it can run it past a person and make sure its guess is correct, and adapt accordingly if not. repeat ad nauseum until the data set is large enough to encompass millions of examples of attractive or unattractive people extrapolated from the original model. And as it closes in on 1 billion users, well, it's a safe bet that TikTok can predict whether a given user will be considered attractive with pretty decent precision. And the platform goes beyond merely promoting the accounts of beautiful people through automation. In March 2020, documents leaked to The Intercept revealed that human moderators were also instructed to suppress posts created by users deemed too ugly, poor, or disabled for the platform. So that's, certainly something.
They're mouthing the words. Mouthing the words to the song.
The core of TikTok's user base is teenagers and young 20-somethings, who constitute anywhere between 40 to 60% of its user base, depending on who you ask. TikTok doesn't make these figures public. It's worth noting that you don't necessarily have to be young to succeed on TikToks. There's certainly some delightful old grannies and grandpas who enjoy a significant following on the platform, and everyone loves that potential breakup song TikTok with the moms. You know the one. But by and large, TikTok has an obsession with youth, which makes sense given its core user base. If you've ever wanted to feel old, I do recommend tracking down one of the accounts that shows videos of retro high school graduating classes from the 2000s and early 2010s. You might think that 30 is fairly young until you watch one of these videos and A, read a bunch of comments saying things like, "The times were so innocent before cell phones, everyone was so happy," and B, realize that you're farther away from your freshman year of high school than current high school freshmen are from their own birth. Teenagers are also hilariously bad at guessing people's ages, so there's a whole subgenre of TikTok videos where good-looking 20-somethings and early 30-somethings post videos of themselves where someone commented, "Wow, are you 18?" and then they reveal that they're like 33 or whatever. So yeah, as long as you look young or look like whatever teenagers imagine to be young, you pass. Good news, fellow boomers, there's still hope for at least a few of us. Not me, though.
So as you guys know, I've been collecting arcade machines. I have one with 1,300 games on it. It's fire.
TikTok makes fairly ostentatious wealth seem normal. For the most part, we're not talking about 1% of the 1% wealth, like Arab oil sheikh money, although there certainly is content to that effect out there, and Mark Cuban's daughter does have an account. Now, I'm talking about properly renovated kitchen wealth, where $15,000 ranges play a cameo. If you really want to know what the upper middle-class suburbs of America's major cities look like, TikTok is your platform. A big part of influencer culture is about emulating the trappings of perceived wealth. And because most teenagers, or really people in general, don't understand that true wealth is held in capital, things like stocks, bonds, real estate that multiply in value over time, their expression of wealth is by showing off their stuff. PCs, TVs, clothes, cars, fistfuls of literal $100 bills, or whatever. For young adults who have newly left the nest, this extends to lifestyle choices. Party videos are big on TikTok, with videos of illicit parties exploding during the deepest quarantine periods of the pandemic. And maybe it's just because I live here, but my FYP is completely saturated with these videos of somebody being like, "Here's my average day on my 40th story apartment on 11th Avenue. And it's replete with, hundreds of teenagers in the comments saying, "This is why I want to move to New York." And for some reason, videos of standard grade New York apartments with requisite century-old parquet floors and low-key vermin infestations don't get the same lift. Wonder why.
I'll be damned if I listen to facts about the mouth of a man with an unwashed ass.
TikTok's main draw is dance, if that wasn't obvious enough from the fact that the developer of TikTok is called ByteDance. ByteDance acquired TikTok's predecessor, Musical.ly, and retooled it in September 2018 to what it is now. Musical.ly was all about lip syncing, but TikTok is all about dance, and dance has driven the growth of the platform. A viral dance can spawn hundreds of thousands of copycat videos, driving even more plays of the songs underscoring them. If you go on the Billboard Hot 100, even if you listen to Top 40 radio regularly, you likely won't recognize a lot of the songs on it unless you also use TikTok. That's because while Billboard doesn't track streams on TikTok, they do track streams on platforms like YouTube, Apple Music, and Spotify. Those streams can bring new songs onto the charts or bring back old ones, as when Dreams by Fleetwood Mac charted at number 21 in October 2020 thanks to this guy. There's room for original content too. You've got some truly extraordinary musicians, many of whom make a living playing their instruments or are attending conservatories, who post videos of themselves performing. There are also visual artists who show how their pieces are created. And let's not forget about athletic TikTok. There's lots of parkour and some really impressive moves. Look at this 7-year-old kid catching a football. Because of the limitations of the medium, however, anything that someone wants to create and show off on TikTok pretty much has to fit within 60 seconds, or 3 minutes if you're using the more recently introduced long video feature. For musicians, this means that covers and novelty songs tend to be the surest path to success. For visual artists, time lapses are the way to go, and athletes can show their biggest plays. What the platform doesn't offer is the bigger picture beyond these highlights, or a place for creators to put long-form content for followers who want to dive deeper into what they have to offer. TikTok has been piloting the ability to make 10-minute videos as of late, but the 60-second TikTok is still king. This can make it hard to tell whether a given creator is truly talented or if they can just do one thing very well, which might put a wrench in SAG-AFTRA's recently announced plans to court influencers into the union.
Oh my gosh. What do I do?
There's a lot of genuinely funny people on TikTok, some of whom are using the medium to poke fun at the conventions of the platform in entertaining and insightful ways. You probably aren't going to see them when you're just getting started on TikTok, though. It's a lot of men are like this, well, women are like this kind of stuff, weird racial shit, and videos that just make the same joke over and over again for 60 seconds. Also, a lot of that thing where people just lip sync over another video doing silly faces, which isn't a joke.
Elite.
Humor is, of course, a subjective thing, and I'll fully admit that most examples of popular comedy, network sitcoms, big-ticket stand-ups, and the like, aren't very funny to me. But what's weird about TikTok is that because anyone can use someone else's sound to create a new video, you might post a joke or a gag, have it go viral, and then watch as tens of thousands of other people record themselves lip-syncing and or miming your delivery of your joke. Sometimes these derivative works achieve even greater lift than the original. Before long, it becomes challenging to determine who actually made the joke in the first place, or even impossible if the account that created the original sound gets deleted or banned.
Hey, my girlfriend and I saw you across the bar, and we just wanted to say we hate your vibe. We're gonna kick your ass.
Nevertheless, having a sound achieve this status is generally considered success on TikTok. Yo, man, come on, check it out. Okay, so this guy recently entered my apartment, and he's set up ring lights all over the place, and now he's refusing to... What are you doing? Yo, stop. Man, come with me, come on. Let's go. Yeah, follow me. Yeah, okay, no, shut the fuck up, come with me. So, I know you guys have been wanting to see the magic, and that is why I'm here, Josh Dribman, to kind of bring you through my whole thing. Yeah, come on, this is my hallway. You know, a lot of you are probably wondering, how do I make it happen? Well, I'm about to show you how the magic's made. Right there, the bathroom. That's where the magic happens. And right on in here, this right here is where I shoot all of my videos. And I know that y'all don't really get to see content creators in action all that much, so, well, I thought I'd just shoot a little video. I'm gonna upload this one to TikTok right after this. Okay, here we go. Right. Shit! Rip to that guy, I guess. It's a shame he's never going to be able to submit his application to the Hype House. Oh shit, we didn't talk about the Hype House yet, did we?
It's a content house. It'd be like living in a movie set.
The concept of a
content house
is pretty straightforward. You've got a bunch of good-looking teenagers and young 20-somethings who live in a house together. The first and foremost rule is to always be making content. The second is, I don't know, be influential.
So Cover and I are lying in here bored as hell.
I'm gonna climb up the shower like Spider-Man.
No, you're not.
The first relatively successful pioneer of this concept was Team 10. If you remember them, it's probably from the internet-breaking release of It's Every Day, Bro, arguably one of the worst songs ever made. Team 10 was essentially a house populated by YouTube celebrities, coordinated by everyone's favorite social media sensation and suicide fetishist, Jake Paul. Sorry, Brian just told me that the suicide guy was Logan Paul. Jake is the one who is fighting Floyd Mayweather. No, that's also Logan? No, these are the same guy. Jake and Logan Paul are the same guy. You are not going to convince me otherwise. Anyway, Jake created this thing called Team 10 and took a cut of the collective's earnings. They produced some videos together, none of which reached the lofty heights of cringe epitomized by their debut single, and the whole thing fell apart after a year or so. The Hype House was formed in December 2019 by this guy, Thomas Petro, a Team 10 alumnus, or maybe he was fired? What exactly went down is unclear and varies depending on who you ask. Priority 1 was to find the right people. Just as a blockbuster movie can sell tickets simply by casting top-flight talent, so too can a content house gain clout by corralling a lot of well-known influencers into a chintzy Los Angeles McMansion and having them do dances in a bathroom. And the initial lineup was pretty stacked, including, but not limited to, Chase Lil Huddy Hudson, Addison Rae, Daisy Keech, Avani Gregg, Charlie D'Amelio, Dixie D'Amelio, Jack Wright, and Alex Warren. Now, adults find this shit particularly fascinating, and I think they grant credulity to the premise because they have zero frame of reference for it, they feel bad about dunking on teenagers, and they take everything that the creators say at face value.
A lot of the time is we're all really young, and we're gonna make mistakes, and the problem is that our life is filmed.
Raise your hand if you're a teenager still. Right.
We put our life out on the internet because that's what everyone wants to see. Like one little mistake and then everyone attacks you for that.
But the negativity hasn't affected productivity.
This means that network TV interviews with TikTok influencers are fantastically entertaining, but there aren't a lot of them. And a big part of the reason is that the pandemic hit right as TikTok was on the cusp of becoming a mainstream presence in popular culture. But we do have this gem of an interview from E.T. from February 2020, along with some supplemental content that they built as part of the package and aired over the next couple weeks.
Addison, you're teaching me some hip move?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Come on, stand up.
All right.
Now, I just want to let everyone know I'm a former professional dancer right here. So I've got moves, I've got high kicks. I feel like TikTok, I was made for it.
Okay.
But I'm not cool enough. And so Addison's gonna help me be cool right now. All right, so teach me the moves, girl.
So not like a regular mom, I'm a cool mom.
In the interviews, there's this interesting gap between the words that are coming out of their mouths and the apparent sadness behind their eyes. All participants repeatedly speak to the value of their friendship and how hard they have to work or whatever, but the Hype House in its initial iteration fell apart pretty quickly once the pandemic began, with much of the original talent leaving by the end of April. I'm not really surprised about this either. The handful of on-site documentation that exists of the Hype House is rough. Because the mansion is primarily populated by teenagers, it's kept in terrible shape, with literal garbage all over the place. There's no real furniture to speak of because everything just exists as props. The overall environment seems to be best described as chaotic. In summary, it's exactly what you would expect from a bunch of 16 to 19-year-olds living together with no adult supervision. The best, most seemingly adult room in the house belongs to Alex, whose dream room simultaneously serves as a cozy private space and a Big Brother-style panopticon.
So it's actually, a lot of people wonder why I have security cameras, because it's not like a traditional thing to have in someone's room. I have it because sometimes I will miss content.
That security camera shit is wild to me, and I don't think that's just because I'm an old man. People in the YouTube comments of this video are pretty uniformly freaked out as well. Beyond the chaos and the surveillance is one refrain: the importance and strenuousness of the work.
A lot of us have put a lot of work into this business. It's like really cool. He's talented, he works hard.
You know, like if you're gonna be in this house, we want like hard workers.
I gotta make sure these kids get to work.
I yell at everyone to get to work.
And while making 60-second videos doesn't seem like particularly hard labor, I do appreciate that sometimes things can be tougher than they appear, even if they're things that you're good at. Oh, that reminds me. We never did finish that story about the best impromptu speaker in the state of Michigan.
Josh Boerman doing impromptu speaking.
Hi.
Yep, that's me. By the way, before we move on, let's just take a moment to roast this fit. I'm assuming that these are Levi's 501s. Now, they're probably 550s, actually. And it's at least 2 waist sizes too large. And that's some sort of button-up from Target that I'm similarly drowning in. Or actually, maybe that's from Kohl's. But the real star of the show here has got to be those New Balances. Son, what are those? As a scrawny kid who couldn't throw or run, I bound up my self-worth and my intellectual acuity from an early age, always seeking affirmation from people who would tell me that I was smart. But it wasn't enough to just be smart, I had to be the smartest. And what better way to qualify that than defeating other gifted and talented nerds who also had an affinity for reading The Economist and wearing ill-fitting suits. In my freshman year of high school, I was always most jealous of a guy named Trevor, who was a couple grades above me. The guy could speak extemporaneously with a fluency that rivaled many prepared speakers. I, on the other hand, had trouble maintaining eye contact. I still do. I remember one round where I delivered my speech, sat down, and watched Trevor deliver a fluent speech about something. I don't actually remember what it was about, but what I do remember was lying to myself in my head saying, yeah, I was basically that good. When the scores came in at the end of the day, revealing that I placed dead last, I decided to give up at first, but then I decided to get better. And I did. Okay, let's talk turkey. In order for us to be able to best understand the dynamics at play in the TikTok economy, we need to look at it purely from a structural perspective. We'll get back to the example of the Hype House in a moment, but first, we should take a look at how revenue streams can work for individual creators. And there is perhaps no better example of a successful individual creator on TikTok than Charli D'Amelio. If you're under the age of 25, thank you for not saying, yeah, I know, in closing this tab, and I promise I'll keep this brief. If you're over the age of 35, Charli is probably the single most influential person in popular culture not named Beyonce. She is 17 years old and has 126 million followers on TikTok, more than anyone else, and that number will almost certainly be out of date by the time you watch this video. Her big sister Dixie also has plenty of clout in her own right, with 55 million followers on TikTok and a fairly successful YouTube channel. As mentioned earlier, Charli and Dixie were very briefly members of the Hype House, but for the most part, they've made bank as independent owner-operators of their own brand and content. Well, sorta. Their dad is a successful businessman and a power broker in Connecticut Republican Party circles. About a year after Mark unsuccessfully ran for election to the Connecticut State Senate, Charli began to blow up on TikTok. Mark immediately went all in, moving the family to Los Angeles and setting up meetings with major entertainment industry players. The D'Amelios endeavor to become the first family of online influencers, the Kardashians of new media, and are chasing clout to that end beyond TikTok. On Twitter, Charli's firmly out ahead with 5.4 million followers, while Dixie had 4 million before deactivating her account back in January. Mark has 670,000, while Heidi has 580,000. And finally, their joint brand account has 470,000 followers. So that's a following, but how does one convert such a following to actual earnings? The D'Amelios serve as an instructive example, and Charli is their crown jewel, the face of the nascent franchise. According to a Rolling Stone article from June 2020, she charges as much as $40,000 to commission a post using your song, and that's probably a significant lowball, given that her follower base and presumably bargaining power has exploded at pace with the growth of TikTok last year and this year overall. For record companies, commissioning Charli is an investment that can pay significant dividends. As we talked about earlier, a particularly viral TikTok sound may deliver enough streams and purchases to chart on the Billboard Hot 100, potentially for weeks on end. While TikTok is the main mechanism that influencers like Charlie use to grow their audience, any savvy business person understands the importance of diversified revenue streams. That's why the D'Amelios also have a significant presence on YouTube. In December, a press release announced that Hulu had officially picked up The D'Amelio Show, which debuted in September 2021 to uniformly lukewarm reviews. Presumably, the critical consensus, finding it boring and depressing in equal measure, wasn't what industrial media's subsidiary, the Intellectual Property Corporation, was hoping for. And yes, that last company name also causes me to break out in hives. Thank you for your concern. Even a cursory outline of what's going on with this family immediately puts to lie the aspirational myth they have built of a girl who magically was blessed by the algorithm and somehow found her way to the top by sheer fortune. There's real money at play here, and it shows in the extremely high production values of their branding and content, as well as the talent they're able to land. I mean, they hired Aaron May, a professional chef, to cook for them and pretend that he was their private chef when they had dinner with James Charles. And look at the quality of that lighting! In reality, the rise of the D'Amelios is a careful, ongoing construction project, where they've been able to take their existing accumulated wealth and leverage it to further build their influence through social media. They didn't leave the Hype House because, as they repeatedly claim in interviews, it became too much of a business. They left because it was a business over which they didn't exert sufficient ownership or control. As for the Hype House and its ownership structure, Thomas Petro is on the record saying that he takes a cut of earnings for all content made in the house, though how much is made is unknown.
I'll put myself out on deals that I'm negotiating for people. So since I have a social media following, I make more money on those deals than I would taking 10% from everyone. Since I'm still 21, I can still do it and get those brand deals in and don't need to take a percentage for them, which is just more money for them and more money for me.
But where did the money come from in the first place to capitalize the operation? A lot of this is left intentionally oblique. Publicizing the details of funding would put the lie to the curated narrative that these hype houses are organic collectives that just kind of spring up around similar tastes and talent, as Andrew Yang seems to actually believe that they do. But what we do know from U.S. Patent and Trade Office filings is that Hype House LLC, a limited liability corporation established in an attempt to secure the Hype House trademark, has Chase Hudson's dad down as its primary contact. Oh, but wait, there's more. Hype House LLC ended up in a patent war with Daisy Keech. Remember her? She claimed co-founder status to the Hype House and ownership over the Hype House trademark. Turns out she'd filed the trademark application a whole month before the LLC did. You see, the Hype House isn't just a house where wacky teenagers hang out and shoot videos. The name itself is potentially valuable intellectual property that could be licensed for products, including games, clothing, beauty products, and more. It's hard to say exactly what happened with this trademark in the first half of 2020 because only some of the filings are available online, but it seems that Daisy stopped pursuing her claim in April, around the time she departed the Hype House, leaving Chase's dad's LLC with the only active claim on the trademark. So what's the effect of all this? Well, if this application gets approved, which it likely will, nobody's going to be able to call their online presence a Hype House from here on out if they're broadcasting reality programming over the internet via an internet channel. And if anyone does, they'll need to either cease and desist or pay significant money to Chase Hudson's dad to franchise the name. Now that's paper. So if you play the game right and hit some of those key points that land you on the For You page regularly, and then you manage to successfully monetize that online presence into some sort of a profitable brand, what happens next? Well, once you've gained an audience's attention, you need to develop a simulacrum of a relationship with them. And lucky for you, a sociology article from 65 years ago lays out exactly how to do it. In 1956, University of Chicago sociology professors Richard Wohl and Donald Horton published an article in the journal Psychiatry in which they coined the term parasocial relationship, which occurs when mass media
gives the illusion of face-to-face relationship with the performer. The conditions of response to the performer are analogous to those in the primary group. The most remote and illustrious men are met as if they were in the circle of one's peers. The same is true of a character in a story who comes to life in these media in an especially vivid and arresting way.
At the time they wrote this article, the national pivot from radio to television was well underway, with hits like CBS's I Love Lucy, ABC's The Lone Ranger, and NBC's Dragnet leading the charge into this brave new world of broadcast video programming. Alongside these scripted shows were unscripted variety and quiz shows, which NBC and CBS dominated with the likes of The Milton Berle Show and The Jackie Gleason Show, respectively. Wohl and Horton's article mostly focuses on these types of MCs, which they refer to as personae. It's worth noting that the concept of a persona was a brand new idea at the time. Now, there are 5 of them, and if only Atlas would release the 5th one on PC, we'd really be getting somewhere.
For real.
So what exactly is a persona? According to Wohl and Horton,
the persona may be considered by his audience as a friend, counselor, comforter, and model, but unlike real associates, he has the peculiar virtue of being standardized according to the formula for his character and performance, which he and his managers have worked out and embodied in an appropriate production format. Thus, his character and pattern of action remain basically unchanged in a world of otherwise disturbing change.
And yeah, that's basically the hook of influencers. There's remarkable uniformity in the content, both within and across channels, all of which has been carefully standardized to achieve a perception of approachability. And particularly if you're a young person, this provides a sense of comfort. Their presence is a soothing constant in a terrifying world of climate change, protest, and historically unprecedented wealth inequality. Not to mention the ordinary pressures of adolescent life. But that's not the only way that influencers comport to Wohl and Horton's definition of personae. In the article, they continue.
The persona tries as far as possible to eradicate or at least to blur the line which divides him and his show as formal performance from the audience both in the studio and at home. The most usual way of achieving this ambiguity is for the persona to treat his supporting cast as a group of close intimates. Thus, all the members of the cast will be addressed by their first names, or by special nicknames to emphasize intimacy. They very quickly develop or have imputed to them stylized character traits which, as members of the supporting cast, they will indulge in and exploit regularly in program after program. The member of the audience, therefore, not only accumulates an historical picture of the kinds of people they really are, but tends to believe that this fellowship includes him by extension. As a matter of fact, all members of the program who are visible to the audience will be drawn into this byplay to suggest this ramification of intimacy.
That's a hype house. Sorry, I mean...
It's a content house.
They aren't just making content together, but in fact are a family. If you're going to engage with their content, you have to play your part in this performance by suspending your disbelief and thinking of these people as your friends, becoming an extension of the family. And that's exactly what fans do. One of the things that struck me most while researching this video was the informal, almost intimate fondness that fans use when talking about their preferred creators in the comment sections of YouTube and TikTok. Comments will touch on the value of the content, of course, but the main focus seems to be on the mental and emotional well-being of the stars of the show, which their fans feel qualified to assess on the basis of the content that they produce. Regardless of how that assessment turns out, all they're doing is interacting with a persona.
For real.
For a long period of time, the United States refused to talk to the actual leaders of the newly communist China.
My senior year of high school, I made it to state finals. 3 preliminary rounds determined who would break to semifinals. I cleared these rounds easily and proceeded to the semifinals along with 11 other competitors. After semis, where scores counted for double, the 6 competitors who had the best cumulative scores across all rounds so far would advance to finals. I made it in. Finals would count for triple. In the final round, standing in front of 20 people in a classroom at Central Michigan University, I experienced sudden performance anxiety. The concision and clarity of thought I had worked to cultivate the summer beforehand at forensics camp in Ypsilanti, and of course the entire season up until that exact moment, just left me. All that remained was a dry throat and a complete inability to opine on the significance of China allowing its currency to float rather than being pegged to a basket of international currencies. I came in 5th place. I think the TikToks about retro high school feels that we looked at earlier hit so hard because it truly was a different time. The comments about everybody being so happy don't quite track with reality, but the nature of performing for a camera, including, Mr. New Balance Dalai Lama expert here, was different. Bringing a camcorder around the halls wasn't exactly a novelty, but nor did everyone have a video camera ready to go in their literal back pocket. If you're an adolescent, it's already hard enough to believe that you really mean something, that you are cool enough, funny enough, pretty enough, special enough. And for an aspiring young influencer, the competition and critical eye is not just one's immediately perceptible peers, it's millions and millions of faceless potential creators serving content to hundreds upon hundreds of millions of potential audience members. Every moment your persona doesn't command a captive audience, you're falling behind your competition. So yes, of course current adolescents feel borrowed nostalgia for these unremembered high school days. They're intuiting how the world felt moments before the rise of the permanent surveillance state, privatized and deputized across hundreds of millions of personal recording devices, full-body scanners at airports, always-on wearable devices that back up your core vital signs to an infinitely redundant server network, advertising cookies that follow every single thing you do online, and everything else that has been bestowed upon us in this post-9/11 environment and subsequent rise of personal cloud-connected microcomputing. I wonder about these kids. As time continues its inexorable march and some new hotness arises, the influencers of this moment will largely become obsolete. Hell, between when I started writing this video and now, this has already started to happen. Some will try to stave off their growing irrelevance by continuing to do what they've always done, steadily growing older while they futilely attempt to recapture the magical spark of a moment that will have passed them, and all of us, by. Others will find ways to pivot into other verticals, working in legacy media as talent or building out cross-platform brands monetized primarily through their own retail. See, here's the thing. Being an influencer is not about what you can do. It's not about what you can make. It's about what you can own. It's about the deals you can close, the audience you can command, the brand power that you can leverage. The parasocial relationships that you can reciprocate by performing your persona. Maintaining that persona in a world of constant information overload is harder than ever. On the one hand, full transparency and access inevitably lead to the nightmare surveillance world of security cameras in your bedroom, where every moment, no matter how personal or private, is potential grist for the content mill. On the other, being too careful with one's output results in a sense of phony curation where everything is just a little too pristine. You can do dances all day long, but eventually you have to deal with the rotting garbage just off camera. After leaving the Hype House, Daisy Keach quickly started a new content collective called Clubhouse, no relation to the app, which she introduced with a pristine, well-lit YouTube video featuring a decidedly more adult aesthetic, alongside the creators who would accompany her in this next chapter of her life. Fans were thrilled about this. The same ones who noted her apparent sadness in E.T.'s Hype House video celebrated in the comments of the Clubhouse introduction video. Yet just 4 months after that, Daisy announced that she was leaving this venture as well, to try to find personal balance in her life, focus on her own brand, and become a landlord.
Honestly, as I was looking for homes, I was like, wow, I would love to start buying homes and renovating them and then putting them up for rent.
Great. People like her will do just fine. But what about the aspiring influencers who just kind of disappear? The ones who get close and do everything right but never quite take off, or those who make it work for a while but over time become less and less blessed by the algorithm and choose eventually to hang up the hat and call it a day, retreating to ordinary lives in ordinary spaces with ordinary ambitions. Have they failed their own aspirations? While I was working on this video, I got on a Discord call with Brian. We talked about camera positioning and different angles we could use to best capture what we were going for during that opening shot. And on a whim, I quickly went to put on my suit jacket, collared shirt, and necktie. I came back, looked in the camera, and had the uncanny experience of seeing the guy I could have been. And maybe for that matter, the guy who I once thought I wanted to be. This was no longer the awkward kid who didn't have any clothes that fit and only through hard work could get an impromptu sentence out without sounding stilted. This was a polished, professional presenter who knew how to command an audience and had been pursuing a career in political communication for his entire adult life. Maybe he'd gotten a consulting job on K Street. Maybe he'd moved into a Georgetown mansion with 11 of his best friends from K Street and called it the Politics House. Looking through the distorted mirror, I remembered what it felt like to need this man. I mean, what did a disaffected 17-year-old whose entire identity revolved around being up on the news have to look forward to? Future me. Erudite, well-spoken, always ready with a quick, witty rejoinder. Clever and connected, wise beyond his years. And yet, I know this man. His purpose and his identity are defined entirely by how he thinks other people ought to see him. He cares about credentials more than anything. He doesn't really befriend people because he's convinced that everybody's out to get him. He trades in influence because insecurity has convinced him that influence is the only currency he has. His greatest fear is not being great. I think I've become something better.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to like and subscribe. By the way, we've also got a podcast, and episode 25 talks about the Hype House and D'Amelio family reality TV shows. So for more info on that, check out patreon.com/worstofall. Finally, special shout out to Ashley Stoneman, Dara Swisher, Hannah White, Nicola Donov, Silverbear909, Timmy Sexton, and Tony Ditty.